Kia kurangatira, tēnā rā koutou katoa. Fellows, members of the Royal Society, whānau, tamariki mokopuna, and everyone who are tuning in today, or whenever. Thank you very much for the opportunity for me to share something of my work over the past couple of decades. Thank you. And before I actually just get into things, I just also want to acknowledge my family who are also already in the Royal Society. So to Paul Tapsell, actually to my father, Hugh, my late father, Hugh Kawharu, and to my little sister, Amakura Kawharu, who beat me to it. She's already in there. So ngā mihi kia koutou katoa. I'm going to try and narrow my presentation to a couple of foci because I think they're relevant for how we think about and tackle complex challenges, whether they're about addressing climate change, impacts on our environment or social issues, and how two parties can better work together based on mutual goals. I've actually got some notes here because 10 minutes isn't very long and I've got about 10 minutes to speak, and if I didn't have notes then I might wander off. So the ideas I'm going to talk about is, the ideas are Kaitiakitanga, custodianship, and Te Tiriti, the Treaty of Waitangi. They originate within the Māori world and the Crown Māori relationship dichotomy, but they have relevance, I believe, for any partnership and, as I mentioned, any complex challenge. So firstly, I'm going to talk about the RMA, the Resource Management Act, which actually is where I started a lot of my research a long time ago. And look, here we are some 34 years later, and it's interesting to see or think about how far we've come or not in terms of both those things, Kaitiakitanga and Te Tiriti. It's time to think about what progress we've made, what we've learnt, and what still needs to be learnt and done where Te Tiriti and Kaitiakitanga are concerned for law and application. The RMA is also a major legal and policy backdrop to a lot of the work that I have engaged in. I think also at the heart of research and implementation for anyone is how can we make a difference in our communities or nation, or how can we leave an imprint somewhere and just make a contribution. This has been true for me when addressing things like improved environmental management or environmental health from Kaitiakitanga perspectives, and improved partnerships with local government, especially when the legal and policy frameworks are already set. So it's interesting to see some of the political perspectives articulated at the time that the RMA bill was being considered. One politician argued, if there's one part of the bill that does give me concern, it is the reference made in it to the Treaty of Waitangi. I believe it will become a stumbling block. Geoffrey Palmer at the time had a more measured perspective on Māori values in general, saying, the bill contains some provisions to ensure that Māori interests and values are carefully and appropriately included in resource management decisions. Concerns were raised also by other non-Māori MPs regarding whether adequate attention is given by the bill to the potential impact from development on Māori ancestral lands, wāhi tapu, sacred or set apart lands, and taonga or treasured resources, places, things. Another MP was even concerned that the bill had a watering down effect on the treaty and only lip service was being given to it. Māori views on Te Tiriti essentially wanted stronger reference to the text of Te Tiriti and to rangatiratanga specifically, and not treaty principles. Rangatiratanga to mean leadership, sovereignty, autonomy, self-determination, those kinds of things. In terms of Kaitiakitanga, the RMA was the first statute to incorporate it specifically, and it was legislated for in Section 7A. It was a watershed moment from that perspective, as previous laws had only given, had either given lip service to resource management interests if they did not actually destroy the ability of Māori to exercise Kaitiakitanga or rangatiratanga altogether. Since then, of course, we have had a lot of progress in related realms in terms of Kaitiakitanga and rangatiratanga, especially in terms of treaty claim settlements, and these are just some contexts of settlements. But where are we at now? We only have to go back a few months to see, the hikoi that took place up and down the country in relation to the proposed Treaty Principles Bill and the 300,000 odd submissions, a record number, that were made. Among other things, Māori were unhappy about the lack of consultation, how the Treaty Principles Bill wrongly interprets Te Tiriti. In essence, they argued exactly the same points raised 34 years ago, that rangatiratanga is at the heart of Te Tiriti, and unity is at the heart of solutions. Solutions that should be jointly created between Crown and Māori. Tuheitia, as in this photo there at the top, like many other leaders, I know my father, Sir Hepi Te Heoheo, Sir Tumu Te Heoheo, and others over many decades, have all strongly argued this principle. It's also a concern when a major review of the RMA occurs, including the idea to withdraw the treaty section in the RMA and replace it with, quote, a descriptive treaty clause. There goes that watering down thing. I don't think anyone would argue the reasons for the current government to review or improve the RMA, reasons like the RMA has delivered poor outcomes for housing, infrastructure, primary industries, energy and the environment, that we have an infrastructure deficit of something like $104 billion, and New Zealand, of course, needs to grow its productivity as well. The issues for Māori are pretty simple. Number one, in terms of legislative architecture, how do they fit into this big redesign, this picture? Where does Te Tiriti fit and where does Kaitiakitanga fit? The issues are both about designing solutions for Māori on the one hand, recognising their own pathways to get here, and secondly, it's also about recognising Māori contributions like Kaitiakitanga, rangatiratanga, and Crown Māori partnerships for improving health outcomes across environmental and health, human realms. These are about Māori contributions to national challenges. Rangatiratanga is essentially about supporting local leadership and their communities to design and implement good solutions for intergenerational, social, economic, environmental well-being and health. I think any community would want that. It is at the grassroots and through collective action, supported by sound leadership, skill excellence and resources where innovation progress can be made. From there you can pilot, then widen, advance outwards and upwards. So I'm just going to briefly pivot to two projects to help showcase what Kaitiakitanga and rangatiratanga looks like. The first here is part of Plate, which is a multi-marae economic system that we have been supporting, where we've been helping marae-based growers produce for a descendant consumer market, both those at home and away. And the idea really is to strengthen connections between kāinga, or communities, kai food, and kōrero, narratives of lands and people, help provide employment opportunities, and, as I mentioned, strengthen whanaungatanga, or connections between people, the diaspora, especially those home and away. So we've seen a number of successes helping people come back, get engaged in horticulture again, replant gardens. Some of them haven't been planted for a generation or two. And we also hope that the foodscape will start to incorporate some of the natural resources in forests and waterways, things like that. Healthy foods, and help to address some of the poor health outcomes that we're all suffering. The second project I've had the opportunity to be involved in and lead is this one, which is about looking at the challenges, needs and aspirations of a number of communities up and down the country in terms of a changing climate. And so one of the major outcomes is the production of these climate adaptation plans. And I think one of the major outcomes too is the way in which we consider again the needs of this diasporic community, where 90% of them live away from their rural homelands. It's a complex challenge. How do you do that? So these plans specifically aims to think about that and address their needs and aspirations. So underpinning these plans is this kind of framework, this Takarangi double spiral, where we think about the impacts and challenges, such as those on the outer parts of the double spiral that you can see there between the realms of Papa Tuanuku and Anginui, and the effects both in terms of all the different realms of environment and the social spheres too, which is outlined in a little bit more detail there in the inner spiral, and what that means for oranga, or good health, and how we try and think about balancing the energy systems within each of those. I guess it's, you might have heard of Kate Raworth's donut economics framework, which is well known around the world. This is perhaps our own version of a cinnamon scroll, you could call it, but we've had it for quite a long time. So where to next? I guess what these projects have taught me is that solutions need to be grounded in communities and anchored in their leadership. This also means, of course, their timeframes, their needs, their aspirations, and understanding also specifically what their challenges are. Our job has been to coordinate effort and to bring together the best of human capital, Western sciences, together with our own sciences, the best of technology as well, and figuring out how to apply all of these specialist skill sets, mātauranga, community knowledge, and perhaps also big data, how they can coalesce to produce the right kinds of solutions in ways that support long-term and continued implementation. I think it's all very well to come up with solutions and then implement them, a contract finishes, but it's the long-term implementation and supports that are really needed, and that's the complex thing, the difficult thing. We can't just leave. The land has always been our lab, our sustenance and our life. AI and other technologies, I believe, can and will help support the implementation of good leadership in rangatiratanga, like custodial practices and predator control, water quality, health improvement, forestry health improvement, or many other things. Times are challenging, like right now, but they've been challenging for a long time. Cost of living, other things. But the opportunities, I believe, are also significant. Kaitiakitanga will continue to guide good practice, and I think it really is something that out of Te Ao Māori is a big contribution that we can make to some of these complex challenges. And Te Tiriti in centralising rangatiratanga and in partnership with the government, I think provides a pretty good frame. Nō reira, tēnā rā koutou katoa. Thank you.